Hi everyone, I'm Shauna and welcome in to another day of Vlogmas. Today's video is one that is a little bit similar to what I made last year. Well, around this time last year. And today I'm going to be talking about all the things I've learned on or with 2 years of no buys and low buys. Last year's video was like 10 tips and advice that I would give you, to have a successful no buy. Really useful and helpful advice in there. The thinking behind that video, it's all still relevant and I do still stand by it all, but I was thinking what might be helpful for somebody who's starting out or thinking about starting a no buy. Whereas this video, I'm really focusing on my own experience and opinion, and it's quite frankly just different material. So I think this is going to be a long one. We have at least 10 things to talk about, so let's get into it. The first thing I want to share with you, and I think maybe the most important thing on here, which is why I'm leading with it, and something that I have mentioned before as well, and that is my no buy didn't fix everything. I have talked about this before, so I really don't want to stay here long. I do say that kind of thing and then stay here long. The reason why I want to lead with this tip is because I think it's the most important. And one of the narratives I feel like is true on YouTube is there's this kind of treatment of no buys as though you do the no buy and then you come out the other side and you're just a brand new person. All of your problems are fixed. And this was absolutely not the case for me. Not shopping and learning to say no, really valuable things, really helpful as well. One of the things I identified in my no buy intro last year is that I shop for a reason. I often have gone to shopping to fix problems that I see in myself. So I use shopping as a way to fix myself, or I emotionally spend money. When I'm having a really difficult time, I use shopping as a coping mechanism. My no buy year did not address any of these problems. It did not help me address why I was trying to fix myself, what problems I was trying to fix, why I felt like I had to fix them in the first place. It did absolutely nothing to unpack or investigate those feelings. And in my opinion, I would never be fixed. My shopping would never be normal or healthy if I had never started getting to the bottom of those things. Whether or not I can say no to a new release, that's one thing. But it wasn't as though, part of the problem was that I just indulged every whim. But once you take that out of the picture, I wasn't just a good shopper or had healthy spending habits. I was using the shopping for deeper, more ingrained problems, honestly. And so while I was able to identify some of the reasons why I shopped, I never went any deeper than that. And that's what was missing from my no buy year that I only started addressing honestly pretty late in 2021. Addressing that I shop because of this is just the surface. And in order to fix those problems, I need to start addressing those feelings. And not in the sense of let me try and fix my inadequacies. That's not what I'm getting at here. It's let me interrogate why I feel inadequate. Why do I feel that way in the first place? And how do I resolve that feeling? Am I truly inadequate? Is this some kind of narrative others told me? Where is this narrative coming from? There's just so much more work to do than I think is maybe talked about on YouTube. So I feel like there's this narrative on YouTube that kind of standardizes a no buy. This is how you do it, and then this is the result. When really people are much more complicated than that, and why they shop and why they've kind of felt the need to go on a no buy is just really diverse. I really needed to get to the heart of the problems, and that's where I felt like I've started to see the success. So I guess the takeaway for me here is that until I'm able to challenge or fix or interrogate, investigate the reasons why I've shopped, I will never actually stop shopping in a way that's harmful. Maybe temporarily, maybe, for a couple of months, but not long term. And my long-term success comes from just that. And so I guess for me, the no buy was a bit of a crutch. And the reason why I call it a crutch is because you can't actually be on a no buy for the rest of your life, and you will have to buy things at some point. And so how do I do that in a responsible way? Number two is that my biggest problem was not self-control. That's part of the narrative as well that I feel on YouTube, is that there's this idea that if we are able to just have more control over ourselves and our impulses, then we wouldn't have shopping problems. And as I've alluded to in the first point, well, not alluded to, as I've explained, that's just not really the case for me. And working on willpower and self-control are certainly part of the puzzle, but in my opinion, not the thing that was my biggest source of problem. And when you focus almost exclusively on self-control and impulse, one of the things I have been reading about when it comes to like addiction, or just some kind of behaviors, self-control is actually finite. You can never have complete self-control all the time. It will run out. Like, your ability to say no will run out eventually. So focusing on self-control and willpower has meant that they will be finite, and I'm kind of setting myself up for failure. And so when people talk about things like, oh, working out, people aren't successful at working out or eating healthy because they rely on willpower. They rely on habit building, as an example. Focusing on willpower and self-control has felt to me like I was setting myself up for failure, and ultimately just doesn't address the deeper issues. When I identified my solution as a stuff problem, I am buying too much stuff, the solution often becomes a willpower self-control issue. I have too much stuff, therefore the problem is, so the thinking went for me, I have too much stuff. If I bought less stuff, then I wouldn't have spending problems, etc., etc. So the stuff problem equals a simple solution of not buying stuff problem. But when you reframe it, or when I reframed it, this is not a stuff problem. This is a much deeper than that problem. This is a I don't want to call it psychological, but this is a I feel inadequate problem. This is a self-perception problem that I'm fixing with stuff. Stuff isn't, like, the stuff is a symptom. The stuff isn't the cause. The stuff isn't the actual problem. So, and on a related note to that point, as well as the first one, inner work has been the most significant element of my success, or being able to achieve success. On my first year, I was able to say no much more easily than I was in the second year of the no buy, low buy. But that's also because the no buy takes a lot of choice away from you. And I was also dealing with significantly more life in this year than last year. When I started doing the inner work, that's when that's when I had my breakthroughs. That's when I realized that I didn't have a stuff problem. I had a self-perception problem. And that's when a lot of the breakthroughs started happening, and a lot of those aha moments. And the inner work was the necessary work, because that was the way to address the underlying issues. And it was addressing why I felt inadequate in the first place. So by inner work, that means going to therapy. That means journaling about how you feel, identifying how you feel and why, and really kind of interrogating myself. And I became really uncomfortable being like, just in sitting in some of those feelings and starting to really figure out why I felt this way in the first. And it wasn't until I did that I realized that the shopping was truly, you know how they say, like, the iceberg. It was just like the tip above the water. What was below was so much more significant and deeper than I expected. And that has meant that, like, way more work needs to be done than I expected, or that I've kind of seen on YouTube and in the internet world. When I started working on these things, I became a truly happier person, because I was buying less stuff, but I was also working on why I felt so shitty about myself, why I felt inadequate, or why I felt unhappy, why I felt like I wasn't worth it. And being able to say that's not true and believe it, being able to counter those ideas and thoughts is so incredibly powerful, really kind of confirmed my diagnosis of this isn't a stuff problem. That is the work that, in my opinion, is going to solve the problem. And I say solve because I think for some of these things, you don't just gain confidence, or you don't just gain, I'm just saying confidence here is kind of maybe a stand-in for all of the feelings that you could feel. But you don't just gain confidence and then feel that way for the rest of your life. It's kind of a back and forth, or an ebb and flow. And you might have days or weeks or months or years of confidence, and other points where it's just not so hot. But I really feel like this has been the tool that has allowed me to have that breakthrough and achieve that success. And when I've been happier, this solution is more, in my mind, is more rewarding and more powerful than it being a stuff problem. Because to me, there's a huge difference between, I didn't buy those things, yay, that's exciting. But what is more powerful is, I feel confident today. I feel worth it. I feel like I bring value to the world. Those are much more powerful solutions and beliefs. And I'm really glad I'm able to experience those feelings. Number 4, I have never regretted not buying something. This is one that is more of a recent realization when I was putting together one of my videos about makeup that I'm glad I didn't buy. I was, sitting there thinking, there's a couple of things that I kind of regret buying that just maybe didn't feel like they ended up being the purchase that I thought, or I wasn't as happy with them as I wanted to be, or I bought some things because of hype, whatever. It feels kind of shitty to buy something that maybe you shouldn't, or maybe that wasn't the best idea or the best purchase after all, and you had a window to return it, but you didn't. Buying something that you regret can just kind of feel so gross. When I'm thinking about the things that I didn't buy, I've never regretted anything, and I've also never circled back to buy anything. There's a difference between saying, I want this thing, let me put it on hold and see if I want it later, or let me wait, or whatever, and saying, no, I'm not going to buy it. Anything that I decided I was not going to buy, I have never regretted not ever picking it up. There's not a single thing that I said no to that I didn't buy, or something that I ultimately wanted but never ended up purchasing. There's not a single thing that I regret not buying. Not one. I interrogated the heck out of this, and I was like, Shauna, I think you're exaggerating. And I went through wish lists. I went through my Sephora wish list. I went through my Cezanne wish list. There's not a single thing that I don't regret buying. And so part of me feels a little bit guilty because there's quite a few things that I do regret buying just over the course of the year. And it feels like, oh, you should have done a better job saying no. But I also don't want to sit in the guilt. And so ultimately, this is a really powerful acknowledgement to be able to say, you've never regretted not buying something. And that to me empowers me to not buy more things in the future. And when I want something, like when I'm lusting after something, I have some new strategies for dealing with that. And so this now feels like a really strong reason not to buy makeup, and a tool that I now feel like is in my arsenal, something that I can tell myself that you won't regret not buying this later. Number 5, I am an over-justifier. This is something that I've noticed in both 2020 and 2021. And when I was trying to think about, for some of these purchases that maybe weren't the best, why did I buy them in the first place? Because I felt like I was making a good choice when I was making a purchase. And what I realized is that both in having this channel, but also trying to be an intentional consumer, has meant that every purchase needs to be intentional, or at least that's the goal that I want. So when I'm making a purchase, when I'm actively in that decision-making moment, my brain feels like it needs to justify it, because it does, right? It needs to fit into my life. It needs to be worthwhile. It needs to be worth the money. Like all of those kinds of questions that I've talked about with fashion and beauty, and all of the cost per wear and how many years you'll wear it. Can I pan it? All of those things. And so what has happened is that I have almost made up reasons or created these small nuances in order to make something fit into a justification. And it's not as though I knew that I was doing this. I genuinely believed what I was telling myself. I had to make something fit because I wanted to buy it. Like my mind was like, well, you don't have a red nail polish, so you need a red nail polish. Or maybe something like, I need a dress shirt to wear to school, or I need this to do this. And I was, in essence, creating reasons to buy stuff in order to buy it. I just wasn't aware that I was doing this, so it took an embarrassingly long time for me to figure out that I was doing it at all. I think one of the more classic examples for me would be calling something a replacement or a necessity when it's not. And I think just like in time and, you know, more experience with replacements and what I call essential, what I was doing, especially in 2020, I felt like my favorite skincare was essential. The true only essentials you need in a skincare routine: a cleanser and a moisturizer. Maybe an eye cream, depending on the moisturizing level of your moisturizer. Those are the only essentials. Everything else is kind of extra. And there's some things that I do like that are part of a skincare routine that makes me happy, like a serum or, you know, something with an active in it. But that is not actually an essential, sorry. And if I had no money, would I buy the serum? No, I wouldn't, because it's not an essential. And so I talked myself into believing that some things were essentials, therefore I could buy them as a replacement. I hope that example kind of clarifies things a little bit. So I realized that I was just justifying everything, and there's a lot of things that should never have been justified. And I really realized this when I was doing that wish list for Christmas, and I made that video about it. And I was allowed to purchase anything that I wanted, including things that were for fun. And I've purchased things that were for fun and were not necessities, even clothing wise, but I called them necessities. And I realized that when I was purchasing things, and I could say, and I could really be honest with myself, right? I was like, well, this is just kind of for fun. I don't really need it. And it was at that moment where I realized, oh my goodness, I have been telling myself things are more important than they actually are because I just wanted to buy that thing. And I've been treating a lot of for fun things as actual legitimate holes in my life when that hole never existed in the first place. This is such a significant realization because it is allowing me to see my purchasing habits for what they are, but there's also a solution for that. If I'm on a replacements only no buy, then I'm creating, like, there's no room for fun, period. So if I create any pocket, even one time a year for a for fun purchase, I can still buy for fun things. It just can't be whenever I want. So I can put that thing on the back burner for later. Like, it gives me a genuine strategy to still buy for fun things while also ensuring that I stop, or at least get better at putting for fun things on or into a budget where they shouldn't be. Next up, I want to talk about financial immaturity. So there might be a more positive word to use here because immature kind of sounds harsh, but I want to give you an example. I moved into this place and did not have an iron or a steamer, and there are several pieces of clothing that I have washed but never wore again because I don't have a steamer or an iron. And I said, oh, Shauna, you can't afford an iron, or you can't afford it, or it's not necessary, or I didn't want to spend the money. The same thing with the blender. I shared the blender story with you in my last no buy update. I bought a cheap blender for like $40 because I didn't have the money. This is the narrative I told myself. I didn't have the money for like a $110, $120 blender, while I had the money to buy a $150 sweater. To me, the responsible decision is to buy the blender, the thing that you actually need, to buy the steamer, the thing that you actually need, than to buy the $40 Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadow. Buying a kitchen appliance just isn't super fun. You don't get to have the same kind of fun with it as you get to with a makeup purchase or a clothing purchase. It's just so practical. But at the same time, in my opinion, it's part of being an adult. You have to make purchases you don't want to make because you need to make them. That can extend to things like car insurance or home insurance, or buying a new hot water heater or a new furnace, or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of unsexy purchases that adults have to make. And I didn't want to make the practical purchase. And so immediately I was kind of hard on myself about it because there's just a couple of things that I should have purchased that I didn't, while I was creating space for things that I maybe shouldn't have purchased. But one of the things that I learned that, helped me to think about that initial gut reaction A lot has happened this year for me, and a lot of things have felt like they were out of my control. And there was a lot of uncertainty in my life, and I didn't know what to do in a lot of places. And where I spent my money, how I spent it, and like what I spent it on felt like one of the few choices that I had. So deciding where I spent my money maybe wasn't always practical, but it just felt like one of the few choices that I could make. And so I understand why I made some of those choices, but I think it's important to also realize that you maybe just need to buy the mini garment steamer. And this is all, I'm just gonna show it to you now. This is the one that I bought. It's small, but honestly, that's all I need. I just want something like, I don't know, there's a lot of people who have those big ones out there. I don't need something huge. I just want to be able to tuck it away and just, I don't want it to take up a lot of room. Number 7 are inventories. And I've promoted inventories as helpful tools to help us really think about our purchasing habits, our collections, and really just give us data to be more mindful about our spending. Because I know for me, seeing, oh, I have 15 blushes has made me less inclined to buy more blushes. You feel me? This is genuinely true. However, inventories have not been the tool that I would have liked them to be because I did not create any kind of mode or mechanism for checking in. All the goals that I set or the practical information in the inventory and the reason why I did it in the first place, the benefits that come from it are negated because I have not actively been checking in with my inventory, checking in with the goals that I set or how many things that I own, and kind of really getting in touch with that. The solution there is just really simple. But for the last 2 years, inventory hasn't been what I wanted it to be. When I was reflecting and I was looking back at some of the tips that I provided in the first video, I was like, oh yeah, the inventory tip is a good one. But I couldn't tell you any of the things that I was doing with my inventory. So I decided to inventory my clothing this year and then also track my wares, which also gave me how many items I own and how much they cost, estimated value. And I'm seeing that every day. Very, very powerful. And I would like to do something with my makeup. And checking in with an inventory is an easy solution, so I can keep that powerful information that I really feel like has a positive effect on me and my shopping habits. I can kind of keep that at the forefront of my mind. Next up, I want to talk about the best of everything. And there's 2 points I want to make here. The first point is talking about buying the best of everything. By that, I mean there's this narrative on YouTube where it's buy the best thing you can. And I always think about Josh from Emma and Josh, the interview that I did, the buy once, cry once. And this is like a really minimalist value, like buying the high quality thing up front, paying more money up front for the high quality thing so it will last longer. In general, that is a good idea. Also feels like a colossal privilege that a lot of YouTubers or minimalist people espouse without giving much caveat or follow-up, or also seeing the privilege in their own words. And it's a privilege because you have the money up front to pay for, let's say, a $200 steamer, you know, a $200 or $400 blender. In my opinion, the best quality blender might be a Vitamix, which is like $500-600. I don't have the money for that, period. And then when it just comes to, like, let's say replacing a couple of kitchen gadgets, right? Well, I'll buy a $500 blender, and then I'll buy a $200 standing steamer, and then I need a new sheet pan. So let me go to this particular store that has like ethical and sustainable sheet pans, and I also need a rolling pin. So like, let's go buy from that small business. Altogether, that's like $1,500. I do not have the money to do that, period. And these are all things that have become genuine needs in the past 5 or 6 weeks. Sometimes I want to give advice about like people like generally out there, but as this applies to me, I often don't have the money to buy the nicest thing, or even the second nicest thing, or even the third nicest thing. And it can depend, the budget I have will depend on the context, on what's happening in my life at the time, or what other things I have to buy. And so what has happened is that I've purchased things beyond my means because they're investments. And I've bought into that. I've bought into that idea that certain things are investments when I can't actually afford them to begin with. So it's not an investment if you could never have afforded it. And one of the things that kind of rubs me the wrong way with clothing, it does bother me when people talk about clothing as investments, because even if you bought the highest quality thing that could literally last you 20 years, even if you wore it 100 times a year, people's style changes, and your style likely won't be the same now as it will be in 10 years. So it could genuinely be a waste of money because your style will not be the same even if your garment lasts. And I have seen some things in my life where I've seen the difference between buying a high quality thing and owning a lower quality version. Like, I'm not saying this is bad advice, because I do see the difference in some of these things. One like really clear example to me is a washing machine. The washing machine that is here is really, really low budget. The dryer just struggles hard, even when there's like 5 things in it. So I do see the value in buying a higher quality appliance. So I have bought into buying things. I guess the takeaway for me that I want to share with you is that I've bought into things that I couldn't afford in this idea of investment. Really, the ethos should be buy the best quality you can afford. And what that is going to vary throughout the year and throughout the course of your life. Sometimes the best quality you can afford is a $10 sheet pan from Walmart. Sometimes the best quality you can afford is a $2,000 pot set. And whatever that is okay. One of the things I've also realized, which is the sub note to this, is this like the best of everything culture and owning the best of everything, as well as what I was mentioning above, or in the previous point of this, buy once, cry once, buying the best thing that you can. I have noticed that in this kind of mentality has led me to almost an obsessive search for some items, most notably a pair of boots and also a camel coat. And I have just become so obsessive about finding the best thing for specific kinds of categories, getting sucked into this language. And so doing that can just be a colossal waste of time, because I've spent hours online searching for things. I bought a couple of things I thought would work out, but then didn't. And there is genuinely something to be said with just making the decision now and just buying whatever the thing is that is just available now. Sometimes that just has to be the choice, so you can be done with making that decision and you can just kind of get it over with. Right? Like when I'm buying my garment steamer, I can set a budget, but I just need to make that decision today, because I don't need to be spending 2 weeks looking for a garment steamer. And so ultimately my point here is that sometimes you just need to set a window and buy the best thing in your budget, and like whatever it is what it is. And so what I want to reiterate here is that sometimes it's okay to not have the best thing. It's okay to have mixed matched, is that it? To have mixed matched mugs, or a pair of pants that don't fit quite right while you can save up to buy a new one. It's okay to have mismatching furniture. It's okay to not have the best, not have the most ideal thing. That is something that I have personally been uncomfortable with, is being okay with like not having the best thing and having mismatched this and that, and my house not being this perfect Instagrammable place. And what kind of has made me laugh is I've seen a lot of videos from minimalists who've said these things while also having a really Instagrammable house and a really beautiful place to live. I need to be content with what I have, and not having the best is okay. Number 9 is a really simple one. The thing that has brought me the biggest peace of mind is not having any emails on my phone. I don't have school emails, work emails, or for fun emails on my phone. It has been the best sense of relief. And I also don't just get pop-ups throughout the day. Like, there's sometimes when I might not be in the best frame of mind. I do not get any pop-ups to buy anything ever, because I am very careful about when I check my email, because it's not on my phone. I will never get that random notification that catches me off guard in an emotionally compromising state. So that has been such a simple, helpful. The last thing I want to talk about is emotional spending. This is the area of my life that I think needs the most work, or maybe not area of my life, area of the no buy life that needs the greatest work, and is one of the larger issues in my kind of spending life. And so this has been a really significant lesson to learn this year, to realize that I am an emotional spender, but also how significantly it affects me and how it can affect my mental health too. And that's one thing that I never considered until recently, honestly. I knew that I emotionally spent a couple of months ago, and I saw some really clear examples of it. And I kind of allowed myself a little bit of space with that because 2021 has just been a shitstorm of a year. So I allowed myself a little grace, but I only thought about it as its implication to money opposed to mental health. And what I mean by that is I have emotionally spent for a lot of reasons, but one of them is to like prove something negative about myself. I've shared this idea before. And if you do something to prove a negative idea about yourself, you are in a way proving it. I mean, it doesn't actually mean that, like, okay, if I'm saying, oh, I'm a bad decision maker, and I prove that by buying something I shouldn't. And then if I prove that by buying something I shouldn't, I feel like that thing is real. I mean, I am fully capable of making good decisions. And that fact alone, that purchase alone, doesn't make me a horrible decision maker. I can't reduce myself to one purchase. In that moment, when I make that purchase to prove to myself that I'm a bad decision maker, and then I prove it, I feel like I'm feeding into that negative emotion. I am feeding into that negative emotion, into that negative belief about myself. I'm just strengthening that, which can just reinforce that idea and that negative image in my mind, therefore making these connections that I don't want, and is not helping me break those connections. I have not actually spoken about the implications of this on my channel. I've mentioned that I've been an emotional spender, but I haven't been, I don't, see, to me this feels dishonest because it's like something can be a lie by not saying it. And so in some ways, like, I don't feel like I've been dishonest, but I also don't feel like I've been upfront about how significantly emotional spending has affected my mental health. But also some of the things I bought that I have shown on the channel have been purchases of emotional spending. And so that has brought me so much shame this year. And I've talked to my friend Courtney about it, and I was telling her about this, and I shared with her some really concrete examples. I was not judged by her at all, and I just felt like so heard. And she really empowered me, or a conversation really empowered me okay, there's two things I'm thinking about for my inventory that were purchased a long time ago that should never have been purchased, but I've kept them out of my inventory because I never shared them to begin with, and then I continued to not share them. And then it's one of those things where it's like I haven't shared them for so long, it feels not good to be like, oh yeah, I haven't shared this thing I did a year ago. I just should have been upfront about it at the beginning to say, I bought this thing this month, I shouldn't have, let's figure this out, let's move on from it. And so there are other things like that like have happened throughout this year, and while I have been able to work past it and really try and stop this kind of behavior, I have still felt shame in it and how it applies to this channel, or maybe like feeling as though people expect more from me and then disappointing other people. But my conversation with Courtney, she gave me a lot of grace and understanding, and ultimately, like, I need to make choices that are the best for myself. And if I'm not doing that, and I'm not serving myself first, then I'm doing myself a disservice. And so I felt really empowered by that conversation with her. And I do plan on talking more about these things, and being more upfront about them kind of from here on in. And there might be a video on it. But this is a habit that I really feel like I need to get under control, and one that I think has been around longer than 2021. But one that kind of got worse this year. The shame can also wreak havoc on your life and make you just feel worse about yourself and feel guilt and just negative things that can reinforce, negative feedback loops that I'd really just want to avoid at all costs as well. So emotional spending and really getting in touch with that, really understanding how it happens, why it happens, and cultivating and creating strategies to avoid it has been a huge, I don't want to say game changer, because I mean it has. I always, whenever I hear someone talk about game changer, I always think about Robert California. He says something like, a change that is so significant that the game cannot be played in the same way again. Anyways, so in that respect, it fits game changer, but it's like in the process of changing the game, it hasn't, we're not at the end of the change. So that has been really significant for this year, and I'm really happy about. So those are all of the things that I've learned in the past 2 years. And honestly, in the lead up to this video, I was getting a little emotional because I have been on YouTube for almost 2 years, and I've been on no buy low buy projects for almost 2 years, and I'm really grateful I have this backlog of videos that I can look back on and kind of see how I've been feeling about my life, and like that's really powerful. But at the same time, I really like 2021 has been the year of like deep learning for me, and none of that could have happened had I not laid the foundation in 2020. And while it would have been great to learn this stuff last year, this is just my journey. Like this is the journey that I need to be on to get where I need to be. And I'm just grateful I made these. I'm just grateful that I learned these things, because there could have been an alternate reality where Shauna never went on the no buy and Shauna was just like, yes, buy whatever I want. Like I'm just feeling a little nostalgic, thinking about the last 2 years and how much I've grown, because even though I just kind of ended on this note of here's this thing that I really want to change for next year, having goals for yourself is not bad, so I'm not ending on a bad note. It's just, I don't know, it's just been such a journey and such a privilege to share this part of my life with you on YouTube. And what also made me a little misty-eyed is how many people have contacted me either on YouTube or in DMs to be like, thank you for making this video, and I've encouraged so many of you to go on no buys or low buys or check in with your spending or anything of that nature. And the kind of thing I want to be in the world is a force for good, and I'm so glad I could influence you all in positive ways. So thank you for being part of this journey with me so far. And next year's focus is really, the goal is to take all these things that I've learned, see the areas that I need growth, and have next year's project really be an answer to that. And I cannot wait to share another year on YouTube with you, hopefully. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again around here soon. Bye.